and I was like, dude, how cool would it be to do like, you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I had
You
some
know,
scrap around.
so you know what's kind of funny is I ended up I ended up buying a clapperboard when I used to do filmmaking, and I think we all just ended up going
Yeah.
right down where it is. Yeah. Hey, so do you have any friends or people on social media that you talk to regularly that are Gen X?
um, well, first off, I don't want to seem off-putting, but I consider
Be
myself
off-putting,
Gen
it's
X
okay.
because I did completely disagree with the timelines. I consider myself
Yeah.
Gen X.
So you cried
Um,
when Kurt Cobain
I,
died?
I that was a tragic moment when his wife killed him. Um,
I saw
yeah,
that
no,
documentary. Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I talked to my brother, and that's, but he's more what I call Generation Y, because he was born in '77.
Mhm.
Um, so I kind of bounce stuff off of him. My sister is like super, super young. So I definitely consider her a millennial. Don't take this the wrong way, man, but like to me, the separation between Gen X and millennial is if do you have TikTok on your phone or do you not? That to me, I know it sounds stupid, but to
It
me,
doesn't
that
sound
feels
stupid.
like
No, no.
that's a very good delineation between do you care about yourself on social media or you're not? And to me, that's more of a good boundary line between the two. But as far as Gen X, myself and my brother is kind of like the only ones.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just adjusting my light. I'm like kind of getting washed out here. And
No, you're good. On
you're looking more Hispanic than I am.
so on your right, it seems like the bulb is too close to the camera.
On the
You're
right. Okay.
you're you're yeah, you're bleaching out a little bit.
Yeah. Some
Uh,
There we go. I mean,
yeah, that's a lot better.
I'm gonna point it the other way so it's not pointing at the camera and I can get some
Yeah, you
ambient fill.
you might
That's
need
better.
some. You just need
Yeah.
a little bit of wash, dude. That's much better.
Yeah, yeah. It's actually pointing the other way now. But now you can see
Yeah,
my some of my board game collection.
yeah,
But so you would say in general, you're oh yeah, but that is a good point about TikTok, which is funny because I'll have people, in their late 40s, 50s telling me how much they enjoy TikTok, and it will always be to me um the way a bunch of douchebags danced during COVID. And I
yeah,
can't I can't get past that. I don't care how good it is now. Um a lot would have to change for me to ever get on it. And one of the only people on TikTok who I thought had anything interesting to say was a guy named the Elder Millennial, and he's on X now. So I follow him on X, and I don't have to be on TikTok. So
mm,
because people would share his videos a lot on X or Facebook, so now I just follow him, right? So,
gotcha.
but maybe you've seen this? There's like a meme where it's like this little blonde kid drinking a beer at the beach. Um, and it's like from the 70s or maybe early 80s, and it says Gen X, the last tough generation before all you guys became pussies. And here's what I say, and obviously there are exceptions. We had guys we served with who were Gen X.
Yeah,
I tell people, depending on how you define this generation, I'm either Gen X or millennial, whatever, because it used to be 1980 was millennial, and now it's
yeah,
Gen X. And all the Gen Xers used to tell me how lame I was. But I'm like, but that's like the joke though, is you guys cried when a rock star died. Um,
yeah,
you guys have no. major war, you won. I mean, if you want to count the Gulf War, all 50 days of it. Um, and here's what I say. I say after 9/11, most of the people I know who were Gen X could not wait to get out of the military. And millennials went and fought and kicked butts and takes names. Now, obviously, that's an accident of birth, considering most people who join the military join around 18 or 19. But I, I feel like I have to defend my younger friends and be like, I know plenty of guys younger than me who are way tougher. I mean, and do I know tough Gen Xers? Sure. But don't try to act like every generation after you is a pussy. You know what I mean? Like, that's just unfair.
Yeah, I have we already started going, or is
Oh,
this just
dude.
like banter?
Oh, dude, we've been talking for like an hour. As soon as you
All
brought in
right,
as soon
so
as you brought in the clapperboard, I started recording.
yeah. Um, so well, let me better explain, because this is actually a subject I'm very passionate about, and I very rarely find myself talking about it. And to add to that, um, is what kind of pushed me into retirement out of the military. Um, Over the course of those 22 years, I definitely saw progressions in not only generational backing, meaning, when I came in, and let me preface with this first,
Okay.
is that every young person that's going to see this is going to be like, oh my God, we get it. You walked uphill both ways with no shoes and you lived on a dirt floor. Like, no, no, man, that's not what I'm saying. Right. Like,
You did
you don't
grow up in
understand.
a trailer, though.
What's that?
Didn't you grow up in a trailer?
I did. I grew up in a
Uh,
trailer on a farm and literally was poor. 95% of my life, I would come home and my family would be like, there's a can of beans and there's a can of potatoes on the stove.
Yeah.
That's your dinner for tonight, right?
Hmm.
Like, and I'm not saying that to be like, oh, look at me. Like, I'm just saying, like, that's literally how I grew up, which is another reason why I push back on the whole millennial thing, is because in my mind, I'm thinking millennials lived in a subdivision or the suburbs, had access to arcade games or PlayStations or game consoles, whatever. I didn't have any of that. I grew up very very poor. I had two jobs, full time jobs when I was in high school. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to help my mom out to pay the bills, like that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I think you have to like I don't I can't stand it when some person, whether they work at a college or has a PhD after their name, whatever, they say, "Oh, this is this generation." Okay, well, here's something that might be a little uh, outlandish, if you will, but there's part of the greatest generation that were pieces of shit. Okay, like
Yeah.
they they grew up rich. They had no problems. They were not standing in bread lines. They were, living life as normal, or their parents were doing illegal activity in order to circumvent the government restrictions that were going at the time due to the recession, right? And during the depression.
Yeah.
So I absolutely hate it when they try to take an entire generation and push them down to say every single person in this generation was exactly the same. And now I'm actually including the greatest generation. Now, I will say mathematically and statistically, the greatest generation, yes. Overall, more than likely, statistically, if you were to run into them right now at the Walmart, they would have amazing stories and have all these challenges and obstacles that they and diversity they've gone over their entire lifetimes, and what a life they built for themselves. Not saying anything different. What I'm saying is if you take the greatest generation and you take my generation that grew up and then found themselves in a 20-year long war, which, oh, by the way, is 15 years longer than the war that the greatest generation dealt with, there's not a plain example or a equal playing field that you can grade the two of us together. So it doesn't make sense to me, at all. Now, I have friends that I would go to their house. They lived in the burbs. They had Sega Genesis. They had every single known toy known to mankind. They had literally everything that was cool at that time, and I love going to their house. Why? I didn't have any of those damn things.
Yeah.
I I grew up with my parents saying go outside. My greatest achievement in life was I had a BB gun that took copperhead BBs, and it was a lever action. And I would go out in our farm and I would go shoot lizards or rabbits or whatever, and barefoot running around all day. And I knew that I had to be inside the trailer by sundown, right? Like that was my lifehood. But if you look at my wife, who I love very, very much, she had a completely different childhood.
Hmm.
So I knew a ton of kids that were all farmers' kids. I would meet them at school when I was growing up. That you had the white kids that were unfortunately the realistic uh, the realism, if you will, of what it was growing up for me. You had the white kids that were the farmers, owners, or kids of the farmers, and then we went to school with a lot of Mexican kids who were the farm hands of all said of those farms. We never didn't get along. We got along just fine. Matter of fact, we actually learned some Spanish because we constantly hung out with these kids, or we would talk to them on a day-to-day basis. Um, but then you look at my wife, who grew up in the greater Orlando area, which was south of me, not very far, 45 minutes south of me. And they had a very widely different perspective on how they grew up and the things that they dealt with. So again, I don't like that whole Gen X and millennial, but I will say, as far as what I've dealt with in the military growing up, my peers that are millennials, I didn't get along with them at all, and I didn't see them eye to eye at all,
Hmm.
nor are the experiences of life at all.
Huh. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned the whole like um not even being that far in distance, but having completely different lives. Like, um, I right now I am in a more than $1 million home, and i- in a 1 minute walk, I could be at a trailer park where it's mostly migrant families. Um, yeah, most of them probably uh, illegal or the politically correct term, undocumented. But that's not what it's about. Um, though they do make tasty food, but we'll get to that in a minute. Uh, uh, but yeah, I mean, I liked hearing your side of it because it's like one of those things. I'm like, stop trying to act like you're tough just because you were born a certain day. Like, and I remember like being in the military, and I would tell people, I'm like, rank to some extent just doesn't really impress me. And people are like, what do you mean? I go, so you're older than me, so you joined the military ahead of me. Let's say you're a sergeant after 4 years. Is it because you're a good Marine? Or in my case, a, a petty officer, second class, right? Is it because
Right.
you're a good sailor, you're a good petty officer? Or is it just, can you run fast? Oh. Do you take
Bless you.
thank you. Do you take tests well? You know? Um, so I always think this whole I'm better than you because I'm older than you thing is stupid. And I think it should always be I am more experienced than you. If you ever want advice from me, I'm,
Hmm.
you know, through the good and the bad. Like I've had legal troubles. Um, I've had financial issues once upon a time. I'm ill. I'm dealing with a chronic illness. Um, I there's many things I can help a younger person with, and there's many things that I'll go talk to my father or some of my friends who are in their 60s about, you know? So just this idea of like, you guys ain't tough because we were born in 1968 to 1980 or whatever the year is. And it's just like, yeah, so you guys are like the ones that sort of you took what the hippies did and you just said, we like your degeneracy, but we need to amp it up to 11, you know?
Right.
So,
Yeah. Well, it's amazing you say that because one of the most unique learning experiences I ever had, um, and you would kind of understand this being a prior or being a Navy veteran yourself. So I got, and I'm going to alleviate names in this. I want to safeguard everybody's, I don't want to dox anybody or anything like that, but um, truly 100% changed me and the way that I see the world. Is such a very good learning experience. It was I had just made chief, and when I'd say just made chief, like I remember going in the first week wearing my khakis after chief season and scared out of my mind because I'm like, oh my god, now I'm the chief. Where
yeah.
your sailors look at you like, no, you're the fountain of wisdom. Everything there is to know and what needs to be done comes out of your mouth. But
Oh,
in in
and can I just clarify for people who may not know?
yeah,
When you're a Marine, your uniform is the same, but your uniform is the same color when you become a staff NCO,
yeah,
right? When you're a
yeah.
chief, the color of your uniform changes, and it's the same color as the officers. Just for people who don't know
Yes.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not even comparable. And I can say this
Hmm.
because I actually led Marines through chief season as a mentor because I'm a Marine myself, and I would have to be like that translator, be like, "Hey, man, this is how the Navy works. You need to understand, right? This is the training and the leadership we're trying to teach you, even though it's very alien to you because the Marine Corps doesn't work that way." I will say this to all the Marines out there: understand that if you are a Marine corporal in E4, you are equivalent to a Navy E6, 100%. And
Yeah,
it's not to degrade the Navy. 100 it's not to degrade the Navy. It's just you need to understand that the Marine Corps is a very small branch, so they push leadership, thank God, to the lowest position possible and give you that mentality at the youngest amount of age at that rank. Whereas the Navy, they're like, well, there's the E6 to E1, there's the E7 to the E9, and then there's the officers, right? Like it's a
yeah,
very sectionalized understanding of leadership because they don't have NCOs or non-commissioned officers in the Navy, right?
yeah.
So I had now just gone from what they call a blue shirt, an E6, and now I've gone through my chief initiation, and now I've put on the uniform of a chief petty officer. So now I wear a completely different uniform, and top of different rank as well. So within my division, I had a first class who was 5 years older than me. Um, a New York Italian, spicy little meatball, was quick to say exactly how he feels, very quick to judge exactly what leadership decisions were given, kind of a thing. Um, but here's the thing that was very odd is when I first showed up to that duty station, excuse me, I was a first class. 2 weeks after I checked into that command is when the results came out, and that's when I made chief. So now I had this peer that now within 2 weeks went from being a peer to being my subordinate. And yes, that's a very awkward thing to have, right? Um, his generation was different than my generation if you want to look at it in the scheme of things.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I understand.
That's a pretty big gap as far as generations go. 6 years. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So I'm the youngin, he is the older, right? So we can look at that from an age perspective. The reason why this is so impactful in my not my career, my life was because of the interactions that I had. He was the leading petty officer, LPO, so he was the highest ranking E6 within our department. Now I've gone from being his buddy to being his boss, if you will, right? All within 6 weeks of each other. And so I knew I'd have to walk on some eggshells and be careful of myself because I was like, hey, man, listen, you might have the highest rank on your shoulder, but he's older than you and he's had more experience than you, right? So you need to respect that from that person. Don't think that you know everything. You're not the fountain of wisdom. This person is still a human being that has more experience in the military and more experience at life than you do. Now, with that said, um, he was he was very ill-tempered. He was very boisterous of his beliefs. He was very quick to call out any kind of hypocrisy that he saw in his mind. I mean, anything and everything you would think of from a Generation X, right? Where it's like, no, screw that, that's stupid, I'm not doing it, right?
That's lame, bro.
Um, yeah, it's lame, right?
Yeah,
All those things. But now here I am, being a person that's 5 years younger than him, having to coach him and to mentor him to get him to be very successful so he can make chief one day, right?
yeah.
That's my whole entire goal
Probably
as a
was never
chief.
gonna happen.
Right, I want to make sailors as successful as possible so we can not only meet the mission but so they can grow in life, right? And they can um, foster on to a better life in or out of the Navy, right? Didn't matter to me. I just wanted to be good people, good human beings. So I remember the first time I just pinned. I think I've been in my office for like a week. I'm still wearing my khakis, and he sends an email to directly to my department head, who was prayer chief as well. By the way, he was the LDO. And if you were to read that email, you would want to immediately get up from your desk, walk to his desk, and punch him in the face because you could feel the sarcasm and the anger in his words, even though there was no all caps or anything like that. You just tell from the way he premised all of his sentences that he was pissed and did not disagree whatsoever what you had to say. And one thing that sailors absolutely hate, and I don't feel bad for them, Marines are the same way. When a leader comes down and says, shut the fuck up because that's what I told you to do, no one likes that answer. Even though it's warranted in some occasions, they don't like that answer, and I can understand.
It's the same when you're a parent. Yeah, whether it's military, it's like, yo, I am the authority. Stop questioning me. But man, I
Yeah,
grew up and Kurt Cobain, Eddie Vedder, and Zach De La
yeah,
Rocha told me to question
yeah,
everything. Question everything.
yeah. I was smoking weed at concerts when you're in high school, man. Like,
Bro,
yeah, I've heard
I,
it.
I was at
I've heard it.
Woodstock 95, bro. I was there. I was
Yeah.
I tried out for the first season of The Real World, and the only reason I didn't make it is because I had herpes.
My jock itched really, really
Yeah.
bad. I had crabs. So, like with this sailor, and here's the other thing too, to add some extra spice to the story. For those of you who've been in the Navy, we have what we call rates, and for the rest of you guys in the different branches, especially the Marine Corps, we have MOSs, right? So it's the same thing. I was a CB, right? So my job typically was I dig foxholes and I do construction and I build forwarding operating bases for the Army and the Marine Corps.
Hmm.
I defend, in combat. I never go on ship. That kind of thing. So I was more of a Marine and a soldier than I was in the Navy, which yes is very awkward for
Yeah.
CBs in the Navy even to this day. Um, and green site corpsmen totally understand what I'm talking about
Yeah,
because,
exactly.
like you,
Yeah.
Doc, you know exactly how that is, right? When you go to blue side. Well, anyway, I joined a special program where I was in a satellite billet, so I was the only CB in this entire command. Uh, and it was an IT command, so I had a bunch of like computer gurus and nerds, and they were super good at what they did, and they were super smart. But do not ask them to put a shovel in their hand, right? Like that's just the way it is.
Oh,
Well,
yeah, and a- and I think that's something, and it's probably something the Navy has in common with the Air Force, uh, Air Force is there's a lot of specialization. All right, so go ahead.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I find myself as a new chief. What I should have been doing at this point in my career is I should have been running a platoon of Seabees on a construction site in Iraq or Afghanistan, right? Doing my thing, controlling everything from material deliveries to vertical construction management to convoy operations, platoon, or patrol operations. These are the kind of things that I was supposed to be doing at this rank. Well, what am I doing now? Because I found myself in this special program over at this IT command. Well, I'm running a watch floor. So that's completely alien to me. It's totally different than the world that I was raised in up until that point. And I was 14, 15 years into the Navy before I finally found myself in this position. So it's very, very alien to me. So I have a very different background than everyone else. I'm at a very different age than most people. And I have a very different personal experience in life growing up than everyone else.
And and
And I
and
kind of,
and to some extent because you had spent a little time out of the military. Was it 2 years in
yeah, I
between?
did about almost 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, so around 2 years between Marine Corps and Navy. So you're in a position where you joined when you were 18, is that correct? The Marine Corps?
I joined 17.
Yes, so 17. Um, so when you got out, you were still a fairly young man. Wait a couple years, you go in the Navy, and you're dealing with people who are a younger part of your generation. And I'm sure just even within, and this is sort of to the point, is like we have these things with, um, even in generations, like 2 years apart, you kind of have a totally different outlook on life, you know?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So I will say that if, and no disrespect to anyone who's ever served, but those that have been in my position will probably agree with me that prior to 9/11 was a completely different military than the post 9/11 was.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a bad way. I absolutely don't. It was, prior to 9/11, it was, we don't really have a mission. We don't really know what we need to do, but we need to be ready for if something happens. We don't know what that happen is going to be. We don't know what that scenario is going to be. We don't know what that enemy is going to be. We just
I,
need to be ready because that's what America asked us to do.
yeah, I mean, and I'll tell you, like, talking to like you, Steele, you, Stu, Mike, Eric, you know, whoever, who was during my second UDP, and then like our conversations, the cadence, the way we interact, there is so much more of like an ease and affection and flow. And while I was so the la um up until this last summer, I hadn't spoken to any of the guys who were your guys' seniors since they got out of the military, right?
Hmm.
And like I connected with some of them during the funeral this summer, and we'll get to that subject during the later part of this podcast. But
God bless you, Corey.
yeah, but there's a different way of talking, of the conversations I have with them, and it is a generational thing. A lot of them are like my age or a little bit older. Um, they are more Gen X. They also went on the first pump together, so I was never gonna really be in their club. I have a different way of approaching things. They, I don't know this, but I have been told the corpsman there before I was there was a bit of a turd. I didn't encounter
Mm,
that because I only knew him as another corpsman and as a friend, so I won't throw him under the bus because that's according to them, he was a turd. Um, but he, I don't. I try not to judge people too harshly by the way they were when they were 18 or 19. But just
which is
in that,
fair.
I can see a big generational difference. And a lot of those
Yeah.
guys, like Corey, Sam. Oh, I didn't even mention the other day. I think he just retired. Do you remember Matthew Chauvin?
Oh yeah.
Chauvin? Yeah, he just retired, or is retiring, I think, soon as
No shit.
as an army pilot, as a helicopter pilot. Right? Yeah, yeah,
Damn, good for
yeah.
him.
Yeah, but that's the thing though is but a lot of those guys were like, "Dude, I did my 4 years. I'm out of here." And I really do attribute that to a generational thing. Not to say in a negative way, but maybe maybe it's because I'm pretty emotionally immature. I always got along with the guys younger than me. I was kind of just sort of not really um and I don't even want to say this in a negative way, because after what they went through on their first pump, I don't blame them if they weren't ready to say, "Oh, hey, doc, rah, 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 come along." I don't hold any grudge about that. Uh, but whenever they say, "Don't meet your heroes," I say, "Too late.
Mm.
I've already met my heroes, and and they are the Marines that I went with on my second pump and went and won a bunch of battles. And I think that's cool. So,
Mhm.
yeah. So I mean, didn't mean it for us to talk a half hour about my, pet peeve, the
No,
the
but I
thing
will.
that's been
I
bugging
do.
me.
Yeah, I do want to go full circle though with that sailor for those that are watching who are wondering. Um, Long story short, I mentored that sailor a lot, and it had nothing to do with age. It had everything to do with mental capacity and mental strength. Right.
Yeah,
So I don't want to wear it down and say that I'm the greatest and he wasn't. It was a they grew up in a time where everything was strength and not necessarily so much foresight. It was more like I have the grounds to survive, and the only way to do that is to be the hardest and strongest of everybody else. And that's fine if you think so, but it's not going to get you ahead in life. And so I spent a lot of time with him. Matter of fact, I hate to say this, but it is so true. God, especially I can imagine him watching, but if he was, he would understand. He would come to my office and be like, "Chief, this is messed up. We shouldn't be doing this. So and so screwed this up." And I'll be like, "Hey, I would say his rate. I don't want to say his rate and give him away, but I'll be like, hey, first class." I was like, "Listen, well, what did you tell him?" I was like, "What do you mean? What did I tell him? What was your direction that you gave to them beforehand?" And he would tell me, and I'd say, "Oh, well, so you didn't specify a time and you didn't specify an actual task. And now you're pissed off because they delivered a product to you that doesn't make any sense and it's not on time. It sounds to me like you're the one to blame and not them." And you could see that light bulb moment go off and go, "Oh, maybe I should have more little self awareness, because when I'm dictating or telling everybody else that the leaders are messing up, they're actually giving me good direction and I'm just not listening to it because
yeah,
I don't want to listen to that authority." So I would
yeah.
say
That pig-headedness is a really big part of that generation.
massive part of that generation that's hard to break. So that and I like to think I'm a weird situation because I think I was in between. I grew up a very different lifestyle, but I will say, long story short, because I know we have other topics we kind of want to get into, is that probably around like 2008 to 2010 is when we started seeing a different mentality coming into the military. And that mentality was not, "I know more than you," or "I want to question everything." It was literally flat out, and you guys can hate me all you want, but it's totally true, is laziness. No accountability and laziness. That's all I dealt with from 2010 until the time I retired in 2023. 3.
Gosh, I
And that
God, God,
entire enti
gosh, I
yeah.
wonder if you ever worked with my younger sister. Ah, just kidding. No, she wasn't lazy. She wasn't lazy when she was a Marine. I'm just making jokes. Yeah,
But it's
no,
true,
but
man, and I still see it today. I still see it
yeah,
today. It's like, the young generation looked at, or Generation X, and they're like, these guys question everything, and they're not smart, and they don't want to work, and this and that. Meanwhile, most of us were working 2 jobs, and yeah, we questioned stuff, but we still did work. And by the time I got to retire in 2023, I've got, I hate to say it this way, but it's true. I had these kids just, showing up into the military, and they never even have a job before. They have
isn't
no
that
idea what
mind
work
blowing?
ethic is. It's
Yeah,
absolutely mind blowing.
and obviously it's um it's not quite off what you were talking about the 2008 thing because I graduated in 2007. But yes, most kids I went to college with had never even had a high school job.
Right.
And I went to a public university. I didn't go to Yale, you know.
Right.
So so I was like, so what did you do for your free time? Oh, one side, oh, I went out and smoked pot. Oh, and what did you do? Oh, I went and you know, chilled. And I mean, I think it says something. And I'm not going to say every kid should be working when they're 16 or 17. But
I
I
will.
well, well, referring to my kids,
Hmm.
yes, you need to be doing something. But I can understand certain kids where they're whatever they're going through. They may not, a job may not be right for them. They,
Right.
they may need to go to Canada and tell a doctor they're really depressed. Well, I have this thing. It's called the
Yeah,
Kevorkian
right.
device.
Right.
Or they
I
also
got
have
a
these
little van. Go step inside.
they have these pods in Switzerland that you go to sleep and you never wake up. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I had mentioned that trailer park, and I said at least they made good food. This is sort of one of the topics I wanted to cover. All right, so recently we've heard about the whole. Have you followed the whole H-1B thing of like,
Yeah, a little bit.
oh,
Yeah.
no, bring them over, no, send them back. Okay, what I don't even want to argue the merits. I personally saw H-1B abused whenever I was a frontline Customs and Border Protection officer. And you would see
Sure.
people, and I don't care if this is perceived as racist. I'm going to do an impersonation. Hi there, Dinesh. How long will you be visiting the United States? Okay, and this is not an exaggeration. Now I am Dinesh. I would like to stay 6 months. Okay, and that may seem like I'm making fun, but what
No,
I'm
no, no. I've been in Bahrain and I served with Indians, so that's
yeah,
why I
yeah,
find
yeah.
that so funny.
I
So,
I I have no animosity towards Indian people. But what I will say is, in general, there is a certain pace of life they have that makes it difficult to interact with them sometimes. And I'm talking about
right.
specifically people that like are from India, born there, that's their culture. I'm not talking about people who have, a second or third generation. It is difficult for for the American experience that is even if you're a backwoods country chill guy, you'll want to get stuff done. So that is a tough thing to do. So you can't tell me that this person is going to be more efficient than an American, right? Well, but
Yeah.
whatever. I don't like the abuse of the H-1B system, but you have had, I'm sure you've seen this, but Neil, Indian food is really yummy. Mexican food is really yummy. If you send them it all home, we won't be able to have these foods. It's like, guys, have you ever heard of a cookbook? Like,
Yeah.
do they think every Mexican restaurant is gonna forget how to cook Mexican food if they deported the
Yeah.
illegals? Like, it's but Ethiopian food is so good. It's like, I am not gonna sit there and eat with my hands your dysentery tasting food. Sorry. Fork a fork and knife and a spoon. Like, have you heard anyone make this argument? Like, "But what about
Yeah,
street tacos?"
I'm unfortunately, which is why I find that your statement so absolutely hilarious. Um, so in my past life, uh, before I retired, I had to go down to Washington D.C. a lot for work, and if anybody has ever been to DC before, you know that there's a row right there in the National Mall where there's a massive line of nothing but food trucks, and they're all these different countries and all these different type of cuisines, and all this kind of stuff. And I had a guy with me, and we were in between meetings, and so I said, "Hey man, it's lunchtime. Let's go grab some food." And I was like, "What are you in the mood for?" Well, here's the thing: restaurants in DC are super expensive, obviously, right? We didn't have that kind of money, so we are like, "Hey, let's just go hit the food trucks." The first thing that blew my mind, the first time I did this, was you will go up to a food truck and it will be wrapped in this like vinyl decal showing you all this amazing, excuse me, these amazing like views of like India and like the sunset from Japan, or this African desert safari land, across our truck. It's all bullshit because all all 50 of those trucks are selling the same damn food. The same thing. You can go to the African truck and buy a gyro, or you can go to the one that looks like it's from China and you can buy fried chicken like you would get from KFC. It was so stupid. Like it was all just to get Americans to go to their food truck and buy stuff from them. But anyway, not to go on that rant. Um, so I was like, "Hey man, what are you in the mood for?" And he's like, "Dude, I got to get some good Mexican. If I'm gonna get some good Mexican, I always want to wait until I come to DC." So I said, okay, all right. So I guess we'll do Mexican. So we went to this Mexican food truck, and we go up to the window, and I have a little bit of broken Spanish that I can speak because my wife's Puerto Rican. And I'm going to piss off a lot of people out there. I'll be honest with you. I prefer Puerto Rican food over Mexican food. It's just a different flavor and spices that they don't like hot. They like spices, like flavor, if you will. Like I will devour some mofongo. But if you look
I
at Mexican
I
flavors, it's
I
much more span.
it's been over 10 years since I've had Puerto Rican food, and the first time I had it was about 30 years ago, and I have to say I enjoyed it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's much more of an island flavor kind of a thing, and which is more in roots with me growing up in Florida. So maybe that's why I
Oh,
like
yeah,
it so much.
yeah.
But Mexican food is very heavy on corn and very greasy, and that's just not really so much my thing. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's not so much my thing. Well, so I go up there and in broken English, or I'm sorry, broken Spanish. I'm like, I want this, want that, whatever. I think I got some enchiladas or something like that. And my buddy goes, we're sitting down on the side and we're eating this food on the corner of the street on this like pony wall kind of a thing. And he goes, "Dude, this is why we can never get rid of Mexicans." And I said, what, I'm trying to understand what? And he goes, "Dude, if we get rid of Mexicans, we'll never get this food like ever again." And I'm thinking, I had like five Mexicans that were legal that worked on my farm when I was younger, and they cooked this food. Matter of fact, they would bring their food from home and specifically feed us white kids because they wanted us to be able to. Because it would be like, they're like, "Oh, you lunch," and we're like, "Ah,
Yeah.
No, because if I go back home, it's going to be fried bologna and like butter on a bread, and that's like
Yeah,
I don't want that, right?
yeah.
A
But
total white trash lunch.
but that's their mentality, is they're like, you know, and I've had people, you know, because I'm very pro, you know, um, and here's your ticket, go home, um, to illegals, right? You'll have people be
Yeah.
like, "Yo, well, I don't know, Mister Vasquez, you might want to be careful." And I tell them, I said, I come from Tejano roots. Uh, the last person to cross the Mexican border in my family probably predates people going to Ellis Island. You know,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
and it's often people on the coast, but the northern coast, or you know, down to DC, who have who think that Texans are just running around with cowboy hats and talking about and just dropping N words or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, bro. Like,
Yeah.
you come here, there's a reason why um Texas is one of the shortest states by population. And it's
Right.
because we have so many Hispanic people, I being one of them, right? So it's not even, it's not like you know, like, and like I said, the whole immigration debate, that's a subject for a different podcast, but just the fact that, like, your culinarily, you want your culinary palate to break laws. Like,
Right.
you're like,
Yeah.
you know, could you imagine if I was at the border of CBP, you know, be like,
Yeah.
you know, you are carrying, um, 370 kilos of fentanyl, uh, but there's a slight chance your grandma might make some amazing tortillas. So you can come into the country because I am a fat man who likes to eat tortillas. Yeah,
Right.
it's just like, like, whatever they say that, you know, they like to throw around the word privilege, right? People do.
Yeah.
And
Oh
and
God, they love throwing that word around.
like, and I recognize, like, I had it better than you growing up. I thought I had it bad. I'm sure at some point, but I had it better than you. I came up with a little bit more privilege than you did. But I had that privilege because my parents made sure I had it. I was it I wa- y-
No,
y-
100%.
You know what I mean? But to be so privileged that you don't mind if, you know, let's say a college student is murdered and raped. Um,
Right.
you don't mind if you're letting more terrorists into the country because, hey, some of them may make some great um, doner kebabs, right?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
just, oh, it's just clownish, man.
Well, not only that, but it's I believe it's a ruse. Um, and in this particular
You're probably
situation, the
right.
story
Yep. Yeah. Go ahead.
in this story that I was, the example that I was giving proved my point. Whereas, we're kind of going back and forth because here's the thing: anyone who's ever been in Southern California and San Diego understands that there is Mexican food and there's San Diego
Kalima's,
Mexican food.
this
Oh
Kalima's up in
my
Oceanside. Oh my God, dude.
God, I will kill a village to get a hold of a mom and pop hole in the wall shop that's got some good Mexican food. And I don't even care for Mexican food, but I'll go out of my way to get their Mexican food. Anyway, so him and I are discussing this, and I was like, well, I'm sure some of them are, illegal because, their family are just they're trying to get their loved ones up here to have a better life. And I totally get that. Um, but then again, let me preface with this: my family came from Germany with no English and a few dollars in their pocket, and were able to create a society or a lifestyle for their family within that society where their generations were able to blossom and be able to live in a better life.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So just because I'm not of the Mexican or Canadian lineage doesn't mean I don't understand that sacrifices are made and should be done. what I'm saying is, with this whole ruse thing, is as we were arguing back and forth on what is and what is not authentic Mexican food, this blonde, very pretty girl, obviously on lunch break as well, there in the DC, downtown DC area, walked up to the same food truck as we did. And this lady that was running the food truck that I needed to use broken Spanish to in order to order my food turned to her and said, "What would you like?" And she says, "Well, I'd like to have, three, tacos and this like whatever dip or whatever." And she goes, "Oh yeah, sure, no problem. I got that for you." And I'm like, "Wait a minute. I thought she couldn't understand English." So
Oh
it's a
man.
ruse, man. A lot of times it's just a freaking ruse. And I'm like, wait a minute. If you are someone that can barely speak English and you're working hard as you can with a small business to make a better life for your family, I wholeheartedly 100% think, I should say, the US government should work just like it was for a white guy starting a plumbing company. I think you should take care of them to start the small businesses out, because I think small business means more
Oh
than
yeah.
large corporations.
Heck yeah.
That's just my personal opinion, right? Um, but if your whole entire ruse is I'm a white guy and I go to that food truck because it's authentic, right? And that's the only authentic food that I can get because they only speak their language, dude, that that's a ruse, is what that
It
is.
absolutely is.
That's lying.
I have a very I'll sort of close with this. This is a very similar story. I wasn't there, um, but my last job, some of the guys in my squad went to go to a hibachi place, and when you go to a hibachi place, it's really, oh, have a I'm trying to
Yeah.
do. I'm not trying to pantomime. Oh, hi, sure, sir. Oh, okay, oh, please, please, please,
Yeah.
please, please. A very heavy
Oh,
accented.
hi, hi, hi. Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
hi.
yeah.
Oh,
So
hi. Yeah.
I was gonna like, oh, konnichiwa, the guys come in, they sit down, and like these are four federal law enforcement officers going to have lunch, and so my buddy Chris, he goes, yeah, he goes, so we're getting ready to get lunch, and the guy's like, oh, you want to do a volcano? Oh, is this fun? You enjoy? And they're like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then he stops and he goes, you guys don't mind if I just talk my normal voice, do you? Like northern Northern Virginia accent, right? And they're like, "Nah, bro, just go food." He goes, "Okay, man, it's been a long shift. This is my lunch. It's lunchtime, and I'll make my food the best you can. But like, I can't speak in the accent, right?" But like, there are people like, oh, this Japanese food. It's so authentic because he talk like
Yeah.
this, and
Yeah.
and he have an anime character on his shirt, you know. But it's like it's a
Dragon Ball Z.
yeah, yeah. Oh, you like Ninja Turtles? Me too. Yeah. It's just but but Neil, as people who have willingly put themselves in uncomfortable positions in their lives, it's like we can't really relate to that sort of mentality of like, but it makes my tummy feel yummy. It's like stop breaking the law.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Um,
and I will say this to bring it to an end here, as I know we're ready to move on to another topic, but going back to growing up on the farm, um, there was uh, two Mexican workers that became very good friends with my brother and I. Their names were so stereotypical, so please don't laugh. But their name was Juan and Benito, and you know, going outside on the farm when it was like summer and we didn't have school, so we would run around, the farm, and we'd be yanking oranges right off the tree and drinking them, and just living at, I think, the most Floridian life that we probably could have lived. Um, those two would be out there working their asses off in the Florida heat, transplanting oranges and doing the day to day work that needed to be done.
yeah.
and working super hard. My God, as I became an adult, I look back and at watching them work, thinking, God, that was some back breaking work in some stifling heat to get things done. And but here's the thing: they would bring their family sometimes over to our property, and we would share food, and we were like one big family whether we spoke the same language or not. I know I was never able to speak to their wives because their wives only spoke Spanish. um, but they still, now later in life, now that I understand broken Spanish, I understand they were calling me like baby,
Huh.
or the little boy or the little son, and they would like pinch my cheeks, and they would give me candy and stuff like that. So um I I have a mixed bag of feelings when it comes to immigrants, but I will say as a constitutionalist, they came to America legally, so why can't everyone else?
Yes, a- and just to sort of um to piggyback off what Chief said. Um, hey, I'm gonna echo Gutty's sentiments. You know, uh, so to piggyback off of that is as a uh, person with a long-held Hispanic tradition um, in this country, someone who used to process visas, the H-2A seasonal worker visa. I think it's H-2A, if I'm wrong, whatever. The seasonal worker visa. You could see
Hmm.
that there were people who did it legally. Um, and I think the people who do it legally are the ones who are actually bringing a skill. Most of the people who are in kitchens cooking your food are probably here on legal status. And I know that shocks people, right? Because someone in their
Hmm.
family owns that restaurant. They could have used chain migration, which if it's family chain migration, I don't have a necessary problem with this. Now, obviously, I made my comment about H1B, and I was sort of, making a joke about how like there's some cultural clashes with Indians. God bless them, no issue with it. People in India, people here who are Indian, but the, but I understand that all cultures do have their frustrations with each other, you know?
Sure.
Maybe we're too loud for Indians. I don't know. Maybe we're too obnoxious and opinionated for looks like one of my kids is playing Paw Patrol. Keep showing up keep showing up on my laptop. But yeah, if anyone wants to call me racist, I don't care. Guilty. You know why? Because everyone is racist. It is ingrained in us.
Yeah.
And um, if I
Or at
was,
least a religious bias.
yeah, if I was a racist and
Or
I taste,
racial, excuse me, racial bias.
yeah, yeah, and if I was eating a tasty taco and I found out you made it and you were legal, I would say, nice taco. Now go home, Paco. I'm just kidding. Shame I have to deport you. I mean, I'm not. You know something I like even less than illegals,
What's that?
women in the military.
Oh, oh, you're getting onto a spicy subject for me.
I will say this as a sister who, as a brother of a sister who served in the United States Marine Corps. I will say this as a son of a woman who served in the U.S. Navy. I don't think. No, I'll give my mom credit. She was a yeoman, so she was a
Okay,
secretary, and that's the
sure,
only thing women should be doing in the military is secretary and nurse. That's it. They should
right.
not be forward deployed. They're there for morale. That's that's my view, and they, and and they are more trouble than it's worth because if they are blessed with a certain curvature, a certain vacuum ability with 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 sturdy knees, and I don't care if this is sounds crass or blue, because I've seen it. I've seen where it's, "Oh, why is she an HM1 and she's only been in 7 years?" "Oh, because she married a commander." And
Yeah.
and whenever it came time for her to get out of the Navy, she just got a divorce instead. So not
Right.
only is she getting that commander's money, now she's getting a six pay. Um, so
Yeah.
getting half of a commander's paycheck and a six pay is pretty darn good. I've seen
Yeah.
it. I've seen where it's, oh, we could promote this guy to chief. He's been waiting around for a billet. Oh, but no. Jenny has some cannons. So if we promote
Yeah.
her, we get to see her in that chief skirt all day.
Yeah.
I'm being real, man.
So I want to be real too. And the reason why I take this topic so to heart is because I was put in a position to be a leader where now granted when I was in the Marine Corps I was an infantryman, and at that time no females were allowed in the infantry,
Yeah.
so I totally got that experience. And long story short, just so everybody knows, so I'm not being completely, like, oh, what's his bias on this? Okay, my bias is that I served with a bunch of men in an infantry unit, and then I joined the Navy where we had to do infantry tactics with females. And so I've had both sides of the story, granted, not the same branch, but have had these different experiences between the two.
And
Um,
and just to piggyback off what Chief's saying, um, I did too because I went through core school and boot camp with women, went to the fleet, served with men, and then my last
mhm.
year in Quantico, I it was whoever, men and women, and probably some people who were in the transitioning. I don't know.
Yeah, you went from
I'm kidding.
a awesome green side to a oh my god, what did I get myself into blue side,
But
which
I
is
will
very common for corpsmen.
I will say that there were a couple girls there. Had I not been dating Stu's sister at the time, I would have been like, I might have wiped some of them up, you know? That's some beauties. Some beauties. And maybe it's just because I came from the fleet where it's like all our ugly mugs. But like, oh, and those white
Yeah.
uniforms, just like, oh, drooling.
Oh, dude, she's not hot, but she's San Diego hot. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally get it. Um, I love this subject because I think that it's not linear. Which we I think up until today and for a while now we've had this argument in society, and it's very compartmentalized. And in my experiences, like as usual, right? Uh, not everything is yes and no. Not everything is black and white. And so I try to look at both sides of the spectrum on it. Now, having served both sides of the spectrum and having my own opinions on it, when someone asks me, do you want females in the military, or even further, do you want females in the infantry? I say, do you want my leadership answer, or do you want my religious answer, or my personal answer? Because
For me, they're
those
all
are
the
three
same,
different
Neil.
things.
Neil, for
Um,
me, they're all the same.
and most people they are. For me, it's
Yeah.
not. I'm going to be honest with you. It's not.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I'd love to hear
and
that. Yeah.
and and the reason why is because if my daughter came and told me that she's joining the Marine Corps infantry, I would think of that differently than my wife telling me she's joining the Marine Corps infantry, or that would be different than my son telling me he's joining the Marine Corps infantry, or whatever. Right now, they're all my children and all or my spouse, but it's the preface at which who they are and what they're wanting to do that makes the difference. It be like, oh well, he's a boy. What difference does it make? Well, he's my son. That's the difference. Oh well, it's somebody else's daughter, but it's someone's daughter, right? Or it's my daughter. Um, so excuse me. So that's where I like to say that I love to live in the gray. I'm a very deep centrist. And so for me, um, I've had a lot of conversations with females in the Seabees where we go to the field, do field exercises, sit in foxholes, fire machine guns, run close air support or close arm support when we're going through. We live in the field. We do construction under intense combat. Like I've done all that, and I've had females with me during that time. Um, and even then, I would have those females who knew my background would say, "Well, I think." Before it was allowed anyway, they would say females definitely need to go in the infantry, and I said, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And they go, "Well, I don't get it. I'm lugging a 50-pound bag of concrete. I'm in Afghanistan. I'm taking in, mortar rounds. It sounds to me like, yeah, absolutely, I could do the job." And I said, "No, you can do the job as a female CB in Iraq or Afghanistan, but that doesn't make you an infantry personnel or infantryman, as I would want to say." And I would have to explain to them there's what you think is infantry and there's what is actually infantry. So you think you're living an infantry life right now because you're in combat, getting shot at, and performing a physical demand within that environment. And yeah, I could see the lateral relations between those two.
Yeah,
Um,
and just to interject here for a second, I think
mhm,
something I would have asked, because whenever I was in the fleet, I was around 240, 250 pounds. I'm in my 260s now. I'm not the, yeah, I'm not the fast guy, the high speed, low drag guy used to be, right? Yeah.
right.
I wasn't fast then either. Uh, but but I would say to this young lady, I would say, do you think you could carry me, a 250-pound man, while you have that 50-pound sack of stuff? Because I'm going to tell you right now, I had Marines who were half my size throw me on their back and be like, dang, Doc, you're heavy, but still run 100 meters with me on their back.
Yes.
So
Yes.
so whenever you say you think what you can do what a grunt can do, well, a Marine says leave no man behind. They mean it. Even if he's dead, you're dragging his dead body out of there because you're not gonna let Haji, whoever, bring up his body in effigy or whatever.
No, that's no, absolutely not. You will you will sacrifice yourself to make sure that even though they're dead, they're going to go home to their family and they're going to, get the solace that their loved one is at least in American soil. Like, so I totally get that. But I'll be honest with you, I didn't even get that far. Right. So I said, okay, that's cool. I tell you what, after work today, come by my tent because we would always have female and males separated in the different tents. Thank God. And so what I would do is I would go back to my tent after work, um, and I would take an entire combat load because understand at CBs they don't do combat loads because they're smart because they don't have to, right? So I would take my sea bag of stuff and my rucksack and all this other stuff, and I would combine it like I did when I was in the Marine Corps in the infantry, and I would put it into one rucksack and then they would combine me like, "Hey, go grab your flak jacket." And they're like, "Okay." So they go grab their flak jacket. And I was like, "No, no, no, no. Where's your magazine pouches?" They go, "Oh, well, they're on my, I haven't put them on yet." "Okay, well, go put them on." "Well, how many?" "Go put on four of them." "Okay, no problem." They go and they put four of them on and they come back. And I was like, "Okay, where's your Kevlar, your helmet?" They go, "Oh, well, I left it back there." "Okay, we'll go grab that too." I was like, "Okay." So they go back and grab it. If they were a convoy security element, I'd be like, "Hey, don't you have a 9 mil?" I was like, "Yeah, I do have a 9 mil." "Go grab your 9 mil." "Okay, cool. Where's your other three magazines for your 9 mil?" "Oh, well, they're back in the tent." "Well, go grab those too because I need those too." "Okay, cool." And so this happened over and over and over again until finally I got them. And what you and I, Rick, would
Hmm.
think as a combat load, and then I put the rucksack on them. And I said, that is what you're going to carry in combat. By the way, it's actually lighter than what I carried in Iraq because you're not carrying a 5 gallon fucking bucket in the back of that thing, which is the only water you're going to get for the
Yeah.
next 3 weeks. So you better ration that off as well. Oh, wait a minute. Who's going to carry the radio and all the batteries that are required for that radio? That wasn't included in your combat load. And I would load them up and they'd be like, there's no way. I can't walk 10 feet with this on. I'm like, yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. You think you're living in an environment that, even though you're in combat and you're carrying combat equipment and operating under a combat environment, you think you can still perform as an infantryman. And you need to understand those are two different things. I respect you as a human being, and I thank you for your service, for raising your right hand to come and build these forward operating bases for these soldiers and for these Marines. But you need to understand you're not a soldier and you're not a Marine. That's the difference.
Yeah.
I'm not
100%.
saying you that you're worthless. I'm not. It's that it's the same thing, right? Like they'd be like, "Oh, well, what am I worthless?" Like, no, look at me. Do I look like a Navy SEAL to you? No, because I can't do a Navy SEAL's job. They are way above me on plane. Does that mean I mean less in life? No, I still did my time, right? So it's this whole persona. It's almost like when I boiled it down to bring this to a point, after years and years and years and years of these arguments, is hedonism. Okay, it all boils down to hedonism. Females want to be able to go into infantry only because they don't want someone to tell them to not join the infantry, even though it causes them harm, even though it destroys society, even though it makes no sense, even though it's more detrimental to society and their bodies. It doesn't matter. They just don't want somebody to tell them no. And it's
Because
like, listen,
it yeah, yeah, and they have a society at large telling them, "You can do anything a man can do."
mm-hmm,
Not even every man can do the job, or else every
no,
man would. So,
right,
and I'll be the first one to say, on runs, because of my asthma, I struggled. I fell out of runs on occasion. Gosh, I probably my first UDP fell out of more runs than I finished. But when it but when it came to the other things, I said, "Well, I'm not good at that. I gotta do other things better." But did did you ever lift weights when you were in the military? Like religiously? Did you ever go to the gym religiously?
religiously, no,
Why? Because you didn't need to. Because you're
no,
carrying anywhere between 50 and 100 pounds, depending on what you're
yeah,
carrying every day. Your core, like there were guys who you're think, "Oh, that guy's fat." You take off his shirt, and he might have a little bit of a layer of fat, but beneath it is
it'd be an
huge
iron
core muscles.
marshmallow.
Yeah. So, like, yeah, sure,
Yeah,
sure, I got love handles, I got flab, but beneath that, I have amazing core strength. I didn't
yeah,
get I didn't get most of that core strength. Now, later on in life, I did powerlifting, right? But
mm-hmm,
when I did powerlifting, I already was lifting as much as some people who had been lifting weights for years. Because for 3 years, my body changed because I was carrying weight, walking constantly, running constantly, doing core exercises. Like, the reason we were lifting weights is because we were doing core exercises, sit-ups, push-ups, leg lifts, mountain climbers, hello dollies, you know, 8 count
mm-hmm.
bodybuilders, burpees, all this stuff to make us stronger as a person. And simply put, it's like, you've heard I've heard people say like when Ronda Rousey was winning MMA fights, "Oh man, I wouldn't want to mess with her." I would say I would demolish her. Like, and they'd be like, "Wow, Rick." I'm like, first of all, I'm a fairly like I don't how to put this the right way. I know I know how to fight. I'm not like UFC level. I would get rocked by a man.
You know how to defend yourself.
I know how to fight. Yeah, and I have
Mm-hmm.
fought, trained fighting over the years. Not, it's been more than 10 years now, but I know what to do, right? even if I didn't know what to do, I'd, and I would put this challenge out there. Like if I were a famous person, I would say any woman in the world who wants to challenge me to a fight, I will win. Because I don't care how big or strong she is. Biologically, a scrawny guy is stronger than a jacked woman. It's just the way it
Yeah.
is. Like, go up to a chimpanzee and try to kick his butt. He will literally rip you apart with his hands, even though a
Yeah.
chimp is smaller than you, because biologically, he is a whole different animal, and he has 5 to 10 times the strength as a man, and we have
Hmm.
3 to 5 times strength as your average woman. So I understand, like, yeah, if you're in the rear, if you're a secretary, if you're a personnelman, fine. Oh, but like, say this young lady you were talking to, what if she was in a Jessica Lynch situation? Like,
Yeah.
oh, Neil, they made up stories about her. Diane Sawyer on the news saying,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
oh,
100%.
that these people tell these legends about this young lady racking the slide on her M16 and putting down covering fire. No, her gun had no lube, it jammed, it failed, and she got raped.
Yeah.
And most women would tell you that I would rather, like, that their biggest nightmare, besides actually being murdered or the death of their child, is to be raped.
Yeah.
And and with us in these forever wars, and some people may not like me using that term, the idea, and you have a daughter, I got 3 of them, and I got 2 sisters. That, like, the rage, if something, it I hopefully will live my entire life.
Hell, hell will rain on earth if anyone touches my daughter.
I will
I will
fly.
slaughter an entire village with a pocket knife and slice their throats with no remorse and go to bed that night and sleep soundly if
Yep.
anyone lays a finger on my daughter.
And if the cops come for me, I'll say, "Yes, officer, I did it." I will go to trial.
100%.
I will go to trial, and then we'll say, "Did you murder Johnny Big Cock?" "Yes, I murdered Johnny Big Cock. He's dead. I
100%.
killed him."
Yeah.
Like, "Well, do you
Here's the
plead
pocket
guilty?"
knife. You don't,
And they'll say,
you,
"Do you ple—" I'll say, "Do you plead guilty?" I go, "No." I go, "Because when you take a father's love for his daughters, what he does is natural, it is protective, it is the instinct of a man, and I will plead not guilty, and you see if the jury sends me to jail. And I'll take a coin flip whether they do or not." So,
100%. And if
yeah,
they decide I'm going to jail for the rest of my life, cool. Let me watch TV and get my 3 squares a day. I'll do it with 100% with a smile on my face, right? Like
yeah.
that's that. But here's the thing, right? Like again, I take this in depth.
Oh, let me real quick.
Eh,
So speaking of which, the reason our third person isn't here is because he's a girl dad also, and
yeah,
yeah,
100%.
yeah. Stu would probably agree. Stu couldn't be here, because right before we were about to go, one of his daughters got a breakdown in traffic. So Stu
Yeah,
will chime in next time he's on. But anyway, continue. Sorry.
yeah, and doing exactly what a father should do for a daughter, which is drop everything and go take care of his little girl, and whatever. And some people might be upset when I say that, like take care of his little girl. I don't care.
They're
You
always
guys
your
can judge
babies.
me all you want.
Always your
I
babies, dude.
tell my daughter to this day. Matter of fact, yesterday I told my daughter because she just turned 16 in December, and I say it so often, I don't even have to finish a sentence. I'll walk up to her and I'll say, "Baby, I love you. Just understand." And she says, "I know, Dad. Daddy, you say it all the time. I could be 104 years old and I'm still your little girl." And you're like, "That's exactly right." You know,
Dude, hugs
because
every morning, man. As soon as they wake up,
absolutely, like
hugs every morning.
I I've seen a Instagram video where this girl is like stripping and she's talking about how much money she's making, but she's having problems finding a boyfriend to start a life and this and that. And this other girl comes on and goes, "Yeah, well, I would have done that too, but my dad kept saying this weird phrase to me when I was growing up, and it sounded like I love you." And I was like, "Yes, 100% yes."
Yeah.
Like, we have to live with the fact on the weight on our shoulders. If we make a mistake, we now have a stripper that's going to be in the family. We're going to have a lady that's going to have, children out of wedlock. And people are like, "Oh, well, you're so old school." Yes, yes, I am. I want my daughter to have a husband that loves her, protects her, provides for her. Like, that's his job in life. Why would I not? Right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, this whole like, oh well, the wife is a Jean-Claude Van Damme and the guy is just a cuck, and just, what I mean, like, doesn't do anything to assist or love his wife. And it's like, dude, what an existence. That's terrible.
Well,
Like,
yeah, and I've also noticed a lot of media is it's now gender swapping, like the new Day of the Jackal series, which I'll actually give a chance because the actors who they have in it are good actors. But
sure.
so in the original book and in the movie, it's a French detective. Now has been replaced by a woman. Because and then you have like there's a couple writers or television creators like uh Shonda Rhimes, the one who makes like Grey's Anatomy. And there's Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who was a British one, and I we were watching this show Killing Eve. All the men don't know how to do their jobs or get killed. All the women are just always on the ball and can kill any man. And then on Grey's Anatomy, it's all the men die or are inept or are just the tool of the woman. All the women are in charge. The head of the hospital is a is an ugly woman whose husband is a firefighter, and let's just say if I were anything but straight, I'd date him. He's like it's this little ugly fat woman, and her husband is
Hmm.
like probably 50, mid 50s, 10 out of 10. Chad would put a ring on it, handsome fella. So it's
Yeah.
they so and this is a show that's been on 20 years, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge makes other content that has a very feminist view. I while I am not a feminist, I think some of third wave feminism, some of them have some okay things to say. I won't even say good. Some of them aren't completely mentally retarded, right? But we have generations of women who have been told you can do anything you want. And it's like
No, you
men,
cannot.
men, you need to, it's the women's turn. It's like, well, I think Donald Trump proved twice that was not the case. So
Yeah.
be like Hillary, be like Kamala, and
Something like Kamala Harris.
Kamala. Um,
Oh my God, she has no idea what she's doing. Let me tell you, the worst deal of deals.
I mean, obviously that's my little joke about politics. Um,
Sure. Yeah.
but but you know, one of yeah, and my sister had a great point of view on it. She, when EOD school opened for women, she decided to go to EOD school. When she did, they basically did whatever they could to get her to fail out because she was a woman. Now, as a brother, I could be like, well, man, that's messed up. It's my sister. But
Yeah.
for the purposes of mission completion and tradition, I do understand where they were coming from. I don't like that it happened to my sister. Um, but I also think, what if she had gotten through? And what if she'd gone to disarm a bomb? And I don't have Cat anymore. That's my sister's name, Cat, right? So,
Hmm.
so to me, I'm happy she didn't end up going to EOD school, or ended up failing out because, and it's selfish for me to say that, but but she is my younger sister, much younger. She's 11
Hmm.
years younger than me, right? Um,
Yeah.
and she and I have talked about it. She kind of looking back, I would say probably agrees a little bit with me. Now, obviously, some of this I'm saying just to kind of be funny, but I genuinely like. I think I almost think that women should just not be in the military at all. I almost do.
Yeah.
Like even in an admin sense. And the reason being is worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, I want you as a man to be able to operate as if you were MARSOC, Delta, Green Beret, um, Navy SEAL, given the worst situation. Like, I'm not a Navy SEAL. I never would have even been able to complete that course. Health reasons, right?
Fuck no.
Yeah.
Fuck no. No, I couldn't complete because the water was too cold. I'm a Florida boy. Ain't no way I'm getting my ass in that water.
You're not a Navy SEAL. We're not even like we are not even remotely. We're closer to Navy SEAL than we will ever be to Delta, right? I have a different
Right.
I have a different respect for Delta than I do for
Oh,
and
100%.
yeah, and it, and anyone who's really met and worked with them knows the difference, right? But
Yeah.
there are moments where I, overweight 44-year-old Rick, you, skinny 42-year-old Neil, could
Yeah.
do could do some Delta stuff if we had to.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
we wouldn't do it as well as they do, but
No.
if the
By
metaphorical
God, we'll hold our own.
yeah, if the metaphorical caca hit the fan, we we would find a way. And simply put, emotionally, physically, and I would even say mentally, women are not built that way. And there are some men who aren't built that way. We call them Democrats.
Snowflake little bitches.
Stu's gonna be pissed. I'm a die, die. Screw you.
Nothing but love for you, Stu.
Yeah, and
Yeah, no, I agree.
and also, let this be our segue. The mentality. Think about how many friends we have who the enemy could not do to them what they did to themselves.